Yoga Boys, written by Elisabeth Pinter. Scene 1, Act 1. The scene is set in New York City sports bar. A man and his two brothers get a table and order a pitcher of beer and some appetizers. Take Me Out to the Ball Game plays on the sound system as the crowd raises their glasses and sings in unison. House lights dim as they begin talking.
Yeah, my little girl, not yet? Yeah, my little girl is getting married.
Black and white footage of the brothers playing baseball in their youth is superimposed on the stage as Horse sings God's Home Movie. A young girl sits in the center of the stage on a stool as the song ends. The spotlight focuses on her as she begins her monologue.
There's something I'd like to see from God's home movie. The story of your neighbors and my baby. I'd see you as a child playing by the sea, just like the story you told.
She loved her power walks, her morning walks with her Walkman strapped to her fanny pack, in the midst of a foggy weekend morning in early autumn, almost October, as the trees were preparing for their brilliance. The signature aroma of the nearby fishing village energized her as she passed the biking teams dressed in the competition, spandex, power gloves, and racing helmets gathering for the event. She stopped to have a cigarette on the park bench. She lay on her back, staring at the clouds above. Her head turned to the wheels, the French designer wheels, all Porsches mostly, turning at 14 miles per hour on the concourse, each biker paced in synchronicity. Her gold Nat Sherman cigarette had expired by the time the last biker made his way toward the yacht club. As a child, her old Victorian home in the elite suburb was a cacophony of sound on these Sunday mornings, and each Sunday the church bells rang at noon, signaling the Pavlovian reaction as the 7 children ran to the window facing the main street as they peered out onto the concourse. It's here that we begin our story. The race for the Plummer family began in their second-story sitting room with the bay window with the window seats that comfortably sat 8 people. The Plumbers themselves never sat in a chair, that is, like you or I. They knelt with their faces pressed to the windows as the bike racers assembled at the starting line. The shot rang out, and the race began. No matter. At 1 o'clock on those Sundays, the eldest of the Plummer clan had plans of her own. It was simple, with her rubber shoes, to walk down the servant steps and leave through the back door unnoticed. The house filled with several hungry, hyper-ravenous teenagers, and an inevitable fight for the palm controls would lead to screams of, "Give me that, I had it first, and I'm gonna tell Mom!" She hopped on her primitive scooter down the street past the concourse of onlookers. The barrage of advertisements and the camera crews turned out a tree-lined street that paralleled the river, just a quarter mile from her destination. The small, decaying Quaker church was her calm from the domestic storm. At this time in her life, the 1970s, she made a path for the Buddhist retreat and the monk that resided in the Quaker church. He was her yoga teacher. A solemn young man from a country far across the globe, a Tibetan priest in training. When he caught sight of her, they acknowledged one another with a simple nod of approval. She was typically the first to arrive. She entered the church and, as a choir conductor, arranged the yoga mats, pillows, and knee rests to the monk's specifications. One by one, the students arrived, stretching in preparation for transcendental meditation. The class size was small, as was the church itself, no more than 14 students. The cathedral ceiling made way for the reflections of stained glass windows upon the freshly waxed and polished oak floorboards. It was in this shadow the shadow of the archangel, that her countenance would meet his. The shadow of the archangel would alight her face as the light in the church pierced the glass through her in the feng shui of her position. In this suburban town, one could imagine Tibet in the Quaker confines of the small church by the river. They understood that class began when the monk lit the incense and the room filled with smoke and the scent that would instill them in the power of Asia. She was the only girl in the class. There were rules for yoga. First and foremost, no shoes. Her standard uniform consisted of a loose-fitting sweatsuit with an inscription of the logo of the college she was destined to attend, Swarthmore. Shoes were removed prior to entering. Each pair stood in a line in a Japanese configuration on the external porch. Shoes that each had a name. Puma, Adidas, Fila, Spalding, Topsider, Earth Shoe, Lacoste. Can you imagine? Nike Air had not even been invented yet. A world where skateboard parks and rollerblades did not exist. Her pair of tennis shoes, her pink tree torns, tied delicately in a bow, stood at the end of the row. Hers for sure. At the opposite end were the monk's rawhide sandals, removed by the teacher as he entered the room. The yoga boys were hers, and hers alone. And she knew it. Surely it was his Puma headband and matching leg warmers that caught her eye, and perhaps what appeared to be his soft, blonde hair and handsome face. She had seen him once before. He could not be forgotten, because he wore the navy blue varsity jacket with the letters for the football team. Maybe she had seen him somewhere else. At the club, perhaps? The club that her family could never afford to join. She would go with her rich girlfriend and her family as a guest on many July afternoons, and some years she was invited for the Hollywood fireworks overlooking the golf course. She opened her eyes, and he was seated just across from her, and was truly lovely. Perhaps he would ask her for a bike ride along the lake. Perhaps he would ask her to go bowling. A date? What if he came over and saw her room? Her room was indeed a shrine to Milton and Bradley. Each night after dinner, the Plummer family enjoyed the mastery of gaming. With too many children in the house, homework came before dinner, and games came after dinner in between dessert. And master all the games they did. And every game had a board except for charades. Her passion was board games, and her walls were covered in curiosity. Her bedspreads, adorned with a giant rook with matching chessboard pillowcases that were painted with glow-in-the-dark paint, which served as a nightlight, handcrafted especially for her at the request of her mother by a local artist and friend of the family. On her walls there were Monopoly boards, checkerboards, masterpiece theater boards, Yahtzee lists, You Sunk My Battleship games, Candyland boards, light brights, 3 kinds of perfection, 2 kinds of twister, Spyro-Gyra, Parcheesi boards, Chutes and Ladders, Champion Hockey, Labyrinths, crossword puzzles, hands-down boards, trouble boards, Scrabble boards, Operation, 2 toss-acrosses, one that was tic-tac-toe, the other more complex math equations, Rubik's Cubes. It was difficult to know where to look. The 2-handed air hockey and pool table were in the basement with their ultimate frisbee collection. Of course, her favorite game of all, Clue. Come on, Miss Peacock did it in the library with the lasso. That's like impossible. There were 4 bingo wheels, card games, Barbie dolls, and an obligatory collection of stuffed teddy bears, 1 in each corner of her room. Her candy shoes were littered throughout the carpet, and her school uniform was neatly pressed and hanging outside her closet door. The only game not mounted on the wall, which was the staple of each and every girl in their teens, was Marble Mystery Date. What do girls do with Marble Mystery Date, you ask? Perhaps you'd better. 4 girls sit at each end of the board, north, west, south, and east. They roll the dice and move their piece around the board collecting points. Occasionally, a girl would land on a square that read, "Open the door, your mystery man has arrived." Then all the girls start screaming. The girl has to open the door, that is, unless someone dragged a boy into the room to play the game, God forbid, and it reveals a complete loser guy for a date. But not really. The guy is actually a superhero. So for instance, my friend would open the door for Bruce Wayne, Katja, who is Batman, and then they have a list of questions to ask Bruce Wayne on a date. Everyone writes down their answers, and if they match the answers, they get points. Questions like, what is your favorite sport? Or where are you going to go on your dream date? What do you do in the Batcave, Batman? The answer to these and other questions were written down and concealed in envelopes at the conclusion of the term. Other interesting dates, like Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk, William F. Buckley Jr., aka the Ghost Rider, Patrick Duffy, aka Aquaman, Charlton Heston, aka the Ape Man, Clark Kent, aka Superman, the creature from the Black Lagoon, aka the Monster Dude, Leonard Nimoy, Dr. Spock from Star Trek, and Tarzan, aka Tarzan. You lose a turn if you get the computer geek, aka Bill Gates, like Supreme Yuck, as a date, the only guy that actually brings you flowers. All the mystery dates bring gifts, and the girls go crazy when they get the date of their dreams. This game, God knows, never left the middle of the floor in the middle of the room. If it went missing, or the boys stole it and hid it under their bed, there would be a temporary crisis of such proportion with screaming downstairs, "Mom, they stole my Marvel mystery date again, and who stole my diary too?" She had artwork, yes. But in the 70s, anything could be construed as art, apart from the museum, sort of. Afternoons at the museum of Perseus and Eros, or some Venetian goddess, that was art. To her, the greatest work of art was the cover of her album from Elton John's release of Captain Fantastic. Much better, she thought, than Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, which left much to be desired. At least she knew what Burning Topin looked like. After listening to that record 700 times with her best friend Harriet, they closed the multi-fold album with the posters and biographies that had been dissected on her bed, bought with the money she had saved from babysitting. The next album she was to purchase was, of course, Elton John's greatest hits, and it was on this day at the mall that would begin her lifelong love affair with the Rocket Man. Her friends traded their albums, but Elton John never left her shelf. Who wanted the Beatles, Fleetwood Mac, James Taylor, Led Zeppelin, or John Denver? Supreme Yuck, or as her girlfriends would say, why bother living? Imagine her state of shock when she went away to college and her lunatic mother decided to sell some of her albums at a yard sale for charity for 10 cents. 10 cents! On that tragic day, she made up her mind with unmitigated determination to enter the world of the music industry. She, herself, was going to work for MTV, and nobody was going to stop her. Her creepy brothers and their weirdo friends belonged to a secret society called Dungeons and Dragons, and despite all her spying on them, she could not discern their true mission. Years later, she would discover they were a tribe of dragon riders. How bizarre. He was her age, 16, and the colleges that they got accepted to would determine the course of their lives. She could have been like the other girls. Maybe she should have been like the other girls. Maybe. The cool girls were all on the cheerleading squad. A few were even on the ice hockey cheerleading squad, and at lunchtime, they would all walk up to the boy of their choice and ask them where they were applying to college in order that they could apply to the same college. Devious? Yes. Ruthless? Perhaps. Important? Very. The cheerleaders' girls' idea of long-range planning was becoming the architects of a collision towards a perfect marriage coupled with an upwardly mobile career. This was the first time in history that this would be possible. The women's liberation movement paved the way for co-educational collegiate education. The girls and boys competing for the same jobs and the same pay in the same metropolis. Although she despised the cheerleaders, there was something to be learned from them. Her father had just finished installing electric lights in the driveway to illuminate the basketball hoops for evening play. It was a novelty, and the first night game that would be played on their street. Maybe she could invite him over. It's September. She had something to do tonight, but what? October would bring miracles. Miracles like candy apples, Indian corn, scarecrows with pigtails, costume balls, Girl Scout cookies, and pumpkin spiced eggnog. The country club, where her brothers worked as caddies, would close down to make way for sleigh riders and snow ladies and ice pavilions. Winters were robust, but autumn was spectacular. The river views afforded timeless landscapes, the ones generally associated with the Hudson River School of Painting. As she breathed in and recited the word Om, her eyes focused down with an occasional glance at the monk. His eyes were closed in quiet contemplation. She was not one for keeping her eyes shut during these exercises, and she stared only at him, the yoga boy. For an hour, the incense would burn, and for an hour, the yoga boys would sit in lotus position and meditate and chant the word of enlightenment taught by the monk. Om. All is one. The last 10 minutes of class were instructed in crouching tiger. The center of the body would reposition to a higher altitude, and the body would keep on the mat with legs encased in a cushion, in kneeling position. These exercises were designed to invoke inner strength. It was here, in crouching tiger, that she fell in love with the chosen yoga boy. He was a baseball player on the high school team sponsored by Friendly's, the local hangout and ice cream bar. Her brother played shortstop on the same team, and Friendly's was playing Nathan's Famous in tonight's game, the World Series of their league. Yes, that was where she had to go tonight. Was he going to play? She had to find out. Oh, I'll ask him after class. Please, God, let him play in tonight's game. Finally, the monk spoke. Excellent class, students. Now we shall take our meditation walk. Meditation walks were interesting. A meditation walk brought your body into an upright position, and standing you would breathe. The exercise was intended to think about walking. Nobody ever thought about walking. It's just not natural to our species. However, in Tibet, one thinks about walking. The monk would lead and we would follow. Slowly, very slowly, we would walk around the room, mimicking the monk. In transcendental walking, you must follow the monk through a forest of trees, a mountain of snow, a walk on the beach, and a walk through a palace, and finally conclude in the reality of walking on an oak floor in a Quaker church in a small town, USA. Everyone returned to their places, and at the end of each class, we would bring our hands together and bow to the teacher, and he would bow to us. Only the monk would speak in class, and the class usually lasted 1 hour to 1 hour and 15 minutes. As they stepped out of the church and sat upon the porch to put their shoes back on, she tried to speak to him, but could not. When he finally mounted his Schwinn bicycle, as she lifted her scooter, she asked, "Will you be playing the game tonight?" "Yeah, we're playing Nathan's tonight, and they're undefeated. Are you going?" "I have to go. My dad's the coach and everything." "Oh my God, so you're Plumber's sister. I didn't know he had a sister. I guess I'll see you tonight." Oh, her heart was racing as she rode off down the street. She raced home, only stopping once at the pastry shop to pick up her favorite cookies. When she arrived home at 1:47, it was as if she had not left. Her brothers were playing pong and playing catch in the backyard. At 2 o'clock, her mother announced, "Plumber, it's time for lunch." Lunch was great still because the barbecue could be fired up until mid-October, and lunch was cheeseburgers and potato salad. As usual, she brought the cookies, which were devoured before the burgers ever reached the picnic plate. "What time does the game start tonight? Did you know that Nathan's Famous has not lost a game the entire season? They'll be tough to beat. Dad can win this game for Friendly's. He's done it before. He can do it again." Her mother said we would pack up a cooler and leave for the game at 5:30. The game started at 6 o'clock. Everybody get ready, on time to go. After lunch, the telephone would be her private domain. The boys would have their hours of baseball, basketball, frisbee soccer, grass hockey, and she would have the telephone all afternoon. She ran up to her room, being the only girl. She had her own room, the boys shared. With 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, she was privileged to have her privacy, and the disasters left in the boys' bathroom led to days of do your chores and clean the tub, and surely the call would be to rake the leaves. The one chore she had was far and above the worst. Laundry for 6 men and 2 women, a job she despised. But with a working mom, she had no choice. This was no easy task. Perhaps 6 hours on an average weekend to wash, dry, and sometimes iron clothing, and to leave them in piles designated for everyone. Each sibling had a basket, and her parents had a hamper that had to be carried up the 2 flights of steps and put in front of each person's doorway. She decided to do the laundry tomorrow instead. Better on Sunday. She had to make phone calls. After 2 hours of gossip and chitter-chatter, as her brothers called it, she was ready to decide what to wear. The big game. He had to notice her, but how? The advice given to her by her friend was definitely designer jeans and a baseball shirt. Girls in the 70s never wore dresses, only on Easter Sunday and Christmas Eve. Anyway, she threw open her closet doors and went about choosing from the myriad wardrobe a selection of attire that would grab the attention of the yoga boy. After half an hour of trying on clothes and having them fall to the ground in disgust as her mom yelled up, 5 minutes! 5 minutes? No way! All right, designer jeans, moccasins, and a Power Rangers sweatshirt. Power Rangers sweatshirt? She knew she would have little time to find out where he was applying to college. She needed a plan. She wasn't a cheerleader, and the cheerleaders would be cheering at the game tonight. She needed a plan. Dad was waiting in the station wagon, blowing the horn. One by one, they climbed in, and the boys knew that she got the back seat facing backwards. She dove over the seats until she sat in the middle of the 2 boys. Everybody ready to go? They turned down the concourse and made their way down the winding road to the stadium not very far away. 2 of her brothers were in uniform, and her dad, being the coach, wore a hat with the word "Friendlies" written across the front. Okay, boys, we're going against Nathan's Famous, and they are undefeated this season. I want you to concentrate and show the team we can all win this, all right? We can win this, yeah, Dad! Now do your best. Dad parked the car, and we all headed out to the field. She was starving, and she ran to get a chocolate bar. I'm going over to the general store to get 3 Musketeers. Anybody want anything? Yeah, get me 2 boxes of Yodels for the team and whatever the boys want. As he said this, he handed her a $20 bill. $20. Anybody want anything? They all screamed at once. A Coke, 7-Up, chips, a Nestle's Crunch Bar, chiclets, a Yoo-hoo. As her mother waved her hand and said, nothing for me, thanks. She walked in the opposite direction of the field as the stadium seats began to fill. As the marching band began to play and the cheerleaders ran into the center of the field and started singing, give me an F, F, give me an R, R, give me an I, give me an E, E. She sang too. Give me an N, N, give me a D, D, give me an L, L, give me a Y, Y, give me an S, S. Go, friendlies, go! She walked slowly, thinking about walking. The sun was setting and the lights automatically illuminated the field. By the time she arrived back, the stands were brimming with people. Moms, dads, friends, families, photographers, and baseball players. The game was about to begin, and Mom always sat on the first base line, so it was easy to find her. Our team was right below us, and the Nathan's Famous team was on the third base line. Her brother was the start pitcher, and they were up to bat. She waved to her girlfriend, signing, I'm over there with my mother, in American Sign Language, a prerequisite for college, like computer science and typing. At the end of the first inning, the score was tied 0-0. Her brother pitched well. Her other brother was a shortstop, and he had made an incredible catch to end the inning. She had finally spotted her yoga boy, and he was playing left field. Left field? She needed a plan. How could this be the last game of the season? No wonder she never noticed him before. He was so far away, and with her brothers pitching and everything, it was hopeless.